I'm about to show you the exact lead system that built my agency from scratch. This is the machine that fills my calendar every single week, and it's the reason I never have to chase clients anymore. Once you've got this running, lead generation stops being guesswork and starts feeling like clockwork. Now, here's how this video is going to go. I'll start by showing you how to build a clean lead list, pulling only the people who actually fit your offer. Then we'll move into how I scrape and validate that list automatically. And finally, I'll walk you through the workflow that qualifies, enriches, and personalizes every lead. So by the time you hit send, every email feels written by hand. By the end of this video, you'll have the same system that books me clients every week. This isn't theory or another cold email tutorial. It's the exact system I use to scale my agency past $100,000 per month. And it's the same one people inside my community are using to land their first clients fast. Like Martin, who signed his first client just 1 week after launching his campaign. Or Devin, who launched his campaigns on a Monday and had his first meeting booked by Friday. These aren't cherry-picked wins. They're what happens when you stop guessing and start running a real system. You're about to see exactly how it works step by step. Before I dive into the system, let's take a second to ground everything. Because if you understand why this works, every part of the workflow will make sense when you see it in action. Cold email has been around forever, but here's what most people miss. It's not dying, it's evolving. The fundamentals have changed. It's still the fastest, most direct way to start conversations with decision makers. What's changed is the efficiency. A few years ago, you needed a full team of SDRs to research, write, and send manually. Now, one person with the right automations can do the exact same thing, faster, cleaner, and at 1/10 of the cost. That's the real shift. Automation didn't replace cold email, it just made it unfair. It leveled the playing field. If you're solo, this gives you enterprise level firepower. But if you're still doing things manually, you're competing against people who can send, track, and learn 10 times faster than you. So the opportunity isn't just to send more emails, it's to build a system that compounds over time. Every lead, every reply, every test adds data that you can use to sharpen your offer and scale predictably. That's how you stop guessing and start engineering results. But let's be clear, this only works if your offer deserves attention. Automation amplifies clarity, it doesn't fix confusion. If your offer doesn't solve a real business problem, so make money, save money, reduce risk, or save effort, the system won't help you. That's why picking the right niche matters a lot. Different markets respond different to levers. Agencies care about ROI, SaaS founders care about churn, recruiters care about speed. So before you think about sending, make sure your offer connects to one of those levers. Once that's in place, the rest is a process, and that's what I'm about to show you. Let's start with the foundation of the system, how to build a clean targeted lead list that actually fits your offer. When it comes to outreach, everything starts with the quality of your list, but not in the cliche ways most people think. You can only send a limited number of emails per inbox per day, so every contact has to count. A clean, well-targeted list is what separates meaningful data from wasted sends. And that's why I use Apollo for 99% of my campaigns. It's simple, powerful, and has the filters that actually matter: company size, industry, revenue, tech stack, and verified decision maker contacts. It gives me precision and scale without the guesswork. I don't need to piece together data from 5 different scrapers. It's all in one place, which makes it perfect for feeding into the rest of my automations. Now, let me show you exactly how to get the most out of Apollo and build a lead list that's ready to plug straight into a system. So to get the most out of Apollo, I think the best way to go about this, from my experience, is by researching or reverse searching the companies that do match your ICP, so your ideal customer profile. In this scenario, so in this example, I'm targeting SEO companies. SEO companies are businesses who, for websites or e-commerce stores, do backlink building and make sure they rank higher on Google searches, so more people come to their websites. So the first thing I did was I found some SEO companies, some bigger SEO companies. I found them by going to Clutch, which is an agency directory, and I just simply searched for top SEO companies in the United States. And the first 5, so Straight North, Funnel Boost Media, Search Bloom, Smart Sites, and SEO Brand. I went to the website, I copied their URL, and with their URL, only their URL, I can just go back to Apollo, paste those URLs in here, and you can see the same 5 company names that I just mentioned are now inside of Apollo. Now, obviously, 5 leads isn't enough for us to start sending. It wouldn't be worth building an automation for. But what we can do is we can look at the industries the companies are given by Apollo. So they're classified in these industries. Marketing and advertising, which is very logical, but also one of them is information technology and services. Now, obviously, we write down these industries for our reverse search, but the more important thing here to look at is the keyword section. Each of these companies have a bunch of keywords which are attached to them. And what we want to do is we want to go through all of these keywords for each of these, in this case, 5 companies, and look at the keywords which might be relevant for our ICP. So SEO companies. Well, the first of them is search engine optimization. I see pay-per-click, Google ads, maybe search optimization. Further down the list, I see pay-per-click management. I see structured data, link building might be interesting. Search engine marketing, definitely. Local SEO, I see high authority backlinking, keyword research, on-page SEO, organic traffic, definitely, and SEO. But what I would do is I would write down all of these keywords that I just found for this company Search Bloom, and I would do the same thing for the other 5, making sure I don't have any duplicates. It doesn't matter that much, it just saves you a bit of time. And then I would go, or I would open another tab of Apollo, which is the following, because now we have the industry, or the industries that SEO companies are classified with in Apollo. And we have a bunch of keywords which all have something to do with SEO companies. We can now start creating our reverse search. So one of the things that I already did is I entered some job titles because we want to reach out to decision makers, not low level or lower tier employees. So what we're doing is reaching out to owners, founders, and C-suite employees. We also want to make sure that these businesses are in the United States. So person location and company location is US. And we don't want to reach out to too big of companies because they most likely won't be interested in our services of lead generation because they already have that in-house. So what I did is I set a range between 5 and 100 employees. Now all that is left, which is what we got from looking at the 5 businesses we know are actual SEO companies, so they actually match our ICP, is we enter the industries, so marketing and advertising, and information technology and services. And then what I added on top were all of the keywords that I identified, wrote down in my notes, and personally think have something to do with SEO. And what it then gives me is a list of almost 19,000 people, 18,900 decision makers, as you can see. And if we look at the company names, Eclipse Marketing, 3-2-1 Web Marketing, Creative Website Market, Social Up Media, etc., etc. For some of these companies, I've gone to the website to make sure they actually also fit our ICP, and all of them on this page at least do very much so. Has to be said that Apollo does rank based on relevance. So if you go to the final page, it might be that there are some companies which aren't SEO companies. And what you can then do is to filter this list and make it a bit more clean. Just look at those keywords and make sure you exclude those specific keywords, making sure those companies won't be ranked or won't be placed on your list. So now that we've got our list, companies that match our ICP, their decision makers, and verified contact data, the next step is to get all of this into our CRM so we can enrich and qualify it. You could do that manually, but it's slow, repetitive, and error prone. That's why I built an automation to handle it for me. Now, as I said, now the list is built, we need to make it usable, and this is where n8n comes in. Instead of exporting CSV files and cleaning them by hand, this automation takes the Apollo list, scrapes only the fields we need, and uploads the lead straight into our CRM, completely hands off. It is not the most exciting part of the process, but it's the one that keeps everything organized. You build the list, and this workflow handles the busy work. It's one of those small backend systems that quietly saves hours every week. Now, let me quickly show you how it works. I think most of you watching this video are aware on the crackdown by Apollo on third-party scrapers like Apify. So instead, what I've built is a new workflow which uses the Apollo API to scrape the list that we just built. So what we do is in Apollo, once you've filled in all the filters and you've created your list, you just copy this URL. And in my case, I paste the URL into my CRM so I can automate this from my CRM and don't have to go and manually paste it into the automation as well. So the same link that I just created by filling in the filters, I pasted in here and I triggered this workflow which created the following. So the URL was received by the webhook, and then the URL plus the starting page is determined. Well, start page is 1. And because this is a test, I just want to scrape maximum of 3 pages. Then to do an API call, you need a bunch of things. You need the API endpoint, you need the headers for the permission, and you also need the JSON body. What is the JSON body? This might be the most confusing part. The JSON body is the filters kind of that you send, that we've already scraped, that we found in Apollo, and you send them through the API. So the API knows exactly which filters you want to filter for. before it scrapes the lead lists. For this, we only need the URL and the starting page. The rest can be done with code. This might look a bit confusing to most of you guys, but you can see that the organization tags, well, these are IDs, but this would be marketing and advertising, and this would be information technology and service, I believe. And then here are all of the keywords, the same keywords I had in Apollo. And you can see the start page is 1. You can see the same employee range, the seniority levels, the locations as well. And per page, it'll scrape 100 leads, which is the maximum the API can do. Now, once the JSON body is created, we can actually do the API call and scrape the very first page, which we do here. Why we need to scrape the first page is because we want to draw in how many total entries there are. So it says there are 17,770 people who match the criteria we're filtering for using the API. Now that we know this, we know that there's a total maximum pages of 178. And this is relevant because here we build a page list. In this scenario, I'm only scraping a maximum of 3 pages, but I could, as you just saw, scrape a maximum of 178 pages. It would then have to create 178 different JSON bodies because every JSON body or every API call will need to have a different starting page. Building the list of pages is what happens here. So you can see this is page 1, page 2, page 3, and if it would continue all the way until the max, it would be page 178 at the bottom. From there, we move on to the actual scraping of the companies and then verifying or finding their email addresses using the same Apollo API. So what happens here before we make another API call is we create the body of the page. The JSON body of the page is exactly the same as you can see as the one we built here. The only thing that's different is the page number we want to scrape. You can see that for the third run, it used page 3. For the second run, it used page 2. And for the first run, it used page 1. These 3 JSON bodies have individually been updated or passed over to the API call, which in its turn did an API call to the Apollo API to scrape us a bunch of companies. As you can see, here we go. First one is Kurt Green. I'll just scroll over some names because they are personal and it gets a lot of information which we don't need. So once the JSON bodies with the right page number has been created, it's being passed over to the Apollo API to once again scrape the first page, which is 100 contacts. As you can see, these would be 3 items, so 3 pages of 100, but that doesn't really work for us because we still want to split them out. That happens in the next one where we split the leads. Now you can very clearly see what kind of information you get from scraping an Apollo lead and how much unnecessary information you also get, which is why we don't want to do this manually. We want to use an automation for this. So we get their first name, last name, we get their entire employment history, we get the departments they work, also a long employment history for this person, the organization they work at, primary phone, languages. All of these rankings, most of them aren't relevant at all. Maybe the LinkedIn UID, organization headcount, departments, here you go, sub-departments, functions, account. As you can understand, most of this you won't ever need in no circumstance. So most of this we want to filter out and only the relevant stuff like the first name, job title, email address, organization and personal LinkedIn URL we want to keep. But before I forget, one of the interesting things you might be wondering is, okay, we already scraped this person, so why do we have to do another API call after this? Well, if I go to the email address, you can see that the email is not unlocked, meaning we haven't paid for the email address, which is why we need to do another API call which unlocks the email address from Apollo. That's just how Apollo works. So luckily we can do bulk searches instead of having to do them individually. So what we do is we chunk this list of 100 into a list or lists of 10, and we upload those 10 contacts up to Apollo, to the API, to then get us back the email addresses this time. So if I go all the way down to his email, now here you go, his email address is unlocked. What used to be locked in the previous one, here we go, email not unlocked is now unlocked in the second one because we paid an Apollo credit for it. Now all that remains, now we have all of the information of the lead or the contact details we need for our qualification and enrichment, which is another workflow. We have to upload these 300 leads that we found to our CRM. So as I said, there is a lot of stuff we don't need. Things we do need or that I use are first name, full name, email address, title, time at company, so when they started in their role, the company name, the industry the company is in, the location of the business, the LinkedIn URL of the person, the LinkedIn organization organization URL of the company, and then the company website, which we need to scrape and use as a data source. All of the other stuff, so the employment history, the departments, a lot of very technical information about the business, I all discard and won't need anyway in the future. Neither do you, so save yourself a lot of headache and use this automation. Now that the list is flowing into our CRM automatically, everything is where it should be, clean, structured, and ready for the next step. So no manual uploads, no formatting headaches, just a consistent feed of leads ready to work with. This next step is where your list turns from a pile of names into real business opportunities. Up until now, we've focused on building and organizing data. Now we are giving it context. This next workflow runs through every lead, checks whether they actually match your criteria, and enriches them with details that make your outreach personal and relevant. Obviously, this is fully customizable. You can qualify based on activity, based on company size, on industry, or any signal that matters for your niche. And it pulls extra context straight from LinkedIn and their website. Finally, it uses GPT to fill those insights into your cold email templates automatically, so every message feels human without needing to write them one by one. Let's jump in and I'll show you exactly what it looks like behind the scenes. So I already kind of gave a bit of a summary, but what this workflow, which is quite a big workflow, actually does is, first of all, it validates the email address. Then we can scrape the company LinkedIn to qualify if the company actually matches your ICP, because whatever lead list you're scraping or whatever lead source you're using, there is always a chance that it messes up, wrong keywords attached or added to it by Apollo, wrong industry, whatever. So it's added to your list without actually being part of your ICP or a fit for your offer. And then we can, once it qualifies, we can scrape the rest, so the personal LinkedIn and the website. Why do we want to do so? Because we want all of the data that we can find, all of the data sources. So once we have all the data, we can use it as input for a large language model, which can then use that data and derive whatever variables we want to use in our email templates. And because we have these variables, so there might be an SEO company in Tulsa, there might be an SEO company in New York. One of them might be professional link builders. The other one might be more focused on copywriting, you name it, whatever. And instead of all sending them the same message, we can be very specific about their process, about their mission, about their location, and use it in an email. So once they receive the email reads like it was just meant for them alone. Now, that was a very high level overview. Let me kind of get into the nitty gritty of how this all works. So once again, I have now a lead list in Airtable, which I use as a CRM. You can use whatever CRM as long as you can send a webhook. Then the webhook is sent over. So as I said, I'm using Airtable. So the lead is pulled in from Airtable. This is the information we got from scraping Apollo. So this is one of the leads. Then we check if the email is valid. I use Neverbound. You can use Prospio. You can use whatever. Just make sure it is valid, because even though Apollo has a filter for only verified email addresses, 10% of the time, maybe 5% of the time, those email addresses aren't actually valid. You end up in spam or your email bounces, and that would be a waste of your sending reputation and therefore your inboxes. Now, same thing to kind of double check. We want to make sure the company we have found or the lead we found is in the US, because we're only reaching out to business in the US, so otherwise it would make no sense. And then, as I said, the first data source we scrape is the company LinkedIn. Scraping the company LinkedIn returns us a bunch of HTML. This is just a snippet, and most of the HTML is code which we don't need and would be a waste of our finances or our money if we use that as input for the LLM, and would also give it a lot of context which it doesn't need and might confuse it. So what we do is we use a code node to remove the HTML and only return us the plain text. Once again, this is just a snippet of the entire organization LinkedIn page. So with the LinkedIn organization scraped, we now have plenty of information because we have location, we have headcount of the company, we have the about page, sometimes we have their specialties, like a bunch of stuff that you can find on the company LinkedIn page. And that is all very useful, and it's always the same stuff, which is, I think, the most important distinction. Let's say you're qualifying a business, like we're trying to do. We want to use a data source which almost always has the same amount of data available for every company. A website doesn't, because some have very elaborate homepages, some just have an homepage with a booking link to their calendar. And if you scrape their company LinkedIn, we can be sure that almost all of the fields, which are mandatory fields, are filled in, so we can use the data to qualify. So one of the fields we use is the about page of the company, which we just ask them, the AI, to determine if the company is B2B, yes or no. And then the same thing we do for headcount, which is just a given. If someone says that they work at a company, LinkedIn says or adds it to their headcount. So for this SEO company, it is B2B and their headcount is between 5 and 30. It's actually 15, which is bang on in the middle. Now, because this company qualifies and we can be pretty sure we're not wasting our money by enriching this person further, we can move on with the rest of the workflow. So the first thing we do is once again go over all of the LinkedIn information, but this time not to identify some variables or some questions like B2B and the headcount, but to actually write us a report on everything it could find on the LinkedIn company page. As you can see, in this case, isn't that much, but it's enough to give us some background. Once we scraped the LinkedIn company page, it's time to scrape the personal LinkedIn of the lead that we have. Why do you want to scrape the personal LinkedIn? Well, the personal LinkedIn gives you a lot of personal information. Personal information can be used for the opening line. If you're writing to someone and saying, hey, I saw you went to this school, I also went to this school, or you're writing to someone and saying, hey, I know you're in this state, have you ever tried this activity or this restaurant, whatever. It adds a lot of personality to your email and it makes it seem as if it was written by a human, even though you're sending thousands of these kind of emails every single day. And that is why I want to scrape the personal LinkedIn account. It is the same process. So it's scraping the account, getting everything from it. So all of the HTML, filtering the HTML, only returning the text, using the text as input for the LLM to write an analysis about the person. So with LinkedIn checked, so the personal and the company LinkedIn, we move on to the company website. So what we do is we first scrape the homepage. Once again, can be vastly different what's available on the homepage, but it contains a lot of HTML. So we then filter the HTML. We check if the result of filtering the HTML is empty. If it is empty, it means the homepage we were unable to scrape the homepage for whatever reason. Some homepages or some websites are location restricted, so I can't access them from abroad or things like that. Sometimes there is no valid homepage or no valid website attached to the URL, meaning we can't really do anything with it or enrich it. In this case, and 99.9% of the times, you are able to scrape the homepage. What we then do is we filter the HTML that we got from scraping the homepage for all the URLs, so all the internal links that are available on that page. You can see it returned 21 items, so there were 21 URLs identified within the HTML. The LLM or AI then determines which of those URLs, because they're all named like about us or dash our team or dash case studies or dash whatever. It then determines which of those pages are most relevant for us. I always identify 4. So there are 4 categories to every website. That's from my experience. So the company mission, offerings and positioning, process and differentiation, and the proof of success, which is just if they have any case studies or testimonials on the website, we want to extract them as well. Because if you can send someone a message and say, hey, I was on your website and I saw you did X for Apple, so increase Apple's CRO by 20% or whatever, we can get you more clients like Apple. That is a personalization most people don't think is possible with automation, or they haven't seen yet. So that does put you apart from the competition who's also doing cold outreach. Now we have the company LinkedIn scraped, the personal LinkedIn scraped, and almost the entire website or the most relevant pages of the website scraped. So what we do then is we use all of that information, and we should have written our email template already, and we use all of the information and use it as input for an LLM to fill in whatever variables we can think of that we want to use inside of the email templates. So for this example, I've already determined some variables. So the variables are company overview, which is same as industry in this case, the ICP of the lead, so the ICP of the SEO company we're reaching out to or want to reach out to, and the pain point the lead solves, so the pain point this ICO company or SEO company solves in this case. Well, the company overview and industry are digital marketing. That's no surprise because, as I said, it's an SEO business. Then the ICP of the lead, so who they want to reach out to, is businesses seeking online growth, because they want to grow online, because they need more backlinks, they want to be found easier by their potential clients. And then lastly, the pain point the lead solves is enhancing web presence effectively, which is just a nice word or a different way of saying we do SEO for you and make sure you're optimized in search rankings. And that is how you turn thousands of cold contacts into warm, relevant leads without losing the human touch. The system handles the grunt work, but you still control the message. You decide what qualifies as a good lead, what information matters, and how it's used in the message. Automation does the heavy lifting, but you're still the strategist behind it. If you want to copy the exact automations I just showed, both the lead scraping workflow and this enrichment system. They're plug and play. You can get them inside my community through the link in the description. It's everything you've just seen, ready to drop straight into your own setup. Now, to bring this all together, what you've just seen isn't a random stack of automations. It's a full lead generation engine, one that collects real data and turns it into predictable meetings. It all starts with clarity. The offer and niche define the foundation, because automation only works when it amplifies something that already makes sense. If your message doesn't hit a real business lever, so money, time, risk, efforts, or positioning, no workflow can save it. Then it's precision. Building the right list inside Apollo is what keeps your system lean. You're not spraying the market, you're handpicking who actually fits your offer, so every inbox slot you send matters. From there, it's efficiency. The n8n workflow that scrapes and uploads your leads turns manual data handling into a background process. No exports, no uploads, no friction, just clean, verified leads flowing straight into your CRM, ready to be used. And after that comes intelligence. The enrichment and personalization workflow is where your system becomes human again. It takes that clean data and fills in the story, who they are, what they do, and why your message should matter to them. Every lead becomes a conversation starter, not just a name in a spreadsheet. And that is the full loop: clarity, precision, efficiency, and intelligence, working together to generate qualified leads at scale. When you combine those, you stop chasing clients and start attracting them. You're no longer guessing what to send or who to contact. The system does the heavy lifting, and your only job is to steer it. That's the real payoff of what you've built here. One machine, 3 workflows, and a clear strategy behind every step. It's the same engine that took me from 0 to a full calendar, and it'll do the same for you if you actually run it. Inside Scaling System Society, I break down everything that sits around this, from crafting a high converting offer to writing winning cold emails, handling replies, running sales calls, and onboarding clients the right way. It's the exact framework I use to scale my agency past $100,000 per month, and the same one members inside are using right now to sign their first clients. If you're ready to build a real client acquisition system instead of guessing what works, the link is in the description. I'll see you guys inside.